everyone else who's working so hard to make this a wonderful experience. If you were with us last night, you've already heard from our moderator for today's panel, Dr. Scott Alves Barton. He is an educator and a chef, as well as a bunch of other things. And he's going to be leading the panel. He's going to be moderating the panel today, which is on the Afro-Latin kitchen. And I am very pleased to introduce him, as well as our wonderful panel of experts.
Hello, can you hear me? Oh, you can. So I'd like, look, both of these people could have a 5 or 10 minute introduction, but in the interest of time in your app, you have an extended bio. I just want to say that my dear friend, mentor, and running buddy, Maricel E is a cookbook author, a restaurateur, a culinary historian, and a champion of many things Latin, cacao-based, and just a lovely person. And Nelson German, who's a new friend of mine, is a winner Top Chef. If you have time in Oakland, he has restaurants, and you should make a point before you leave the Bay Area to eat Nelson's food in his own house. And I want to now go into the kitchen with them, but before we start, I want to, in part because of the nature of some of the sessions we've had, and particularly in relation to the dish that Maricel is going to make, offer what is a dish that used to be present in the Baianas de Leite, the black women or mulatto women who sell dairy products, but also in the candomblé tejeros, the first food that we offer to the gods for Oshala, the god that would be somewhat mimetic to the Christian god. And so his food is simple, it's white, it's unseasoned. So this is a hominy corn and coconut milk kind of dumpling. So I'd like to offer one to you.
Thank you.
And to you. It is wrapped in banana leaf so that malevolent energy is not able to get in. If you were an acolyte or a young person in a temple, you would be making hundreds of these before any ceremony. Ajum. Ajumbo.
Ajumbo.
Come and eat, enjoy the food, basically. So with that, let us begin.
I need my music.
Maricel said something about music.
Yeah, I'm waiting for my music to start.
Oh.
There it is.
You can salsa in the aisles if you need to.
I want you to listen carefully. Okay, move.
Yeah, no problem.
This is not a show, this is the way we do things.
Yeah.
You know, with rhythm and music. And the reason why I wanted to play this song is because it tells you a recipe. It's called quimbombo que resbala. Okra that slides over yuca and African yams. And then the recipe goes on and says, and it's delicious. You know, the slimy okra is delicious, cooked with cornmeal, which we call harina, and seasoned with dry shrimp, or cooked with chicken. In this case, I'm cooking pork, because he's using chicken, so I said, no overlapping here. You know, it's just gorgeous, and it's a song recipe that became very popular in the 1950s. It was written earlier by a composer from my home region, which is Oriente, Eastern Cuba. You know, there's a fight between Guantanamo and Santiago about who was the Afro-Cuban musician who composed it. But the thing is that the orchestra that made it popular is called Chapotín and his stars. Chapotín y sus estrellas. And made it so popular that everyone in Cuba knows the song by heart. But it shows, you know, the democracy of the plate and the democracy that comes from music, that everyone knows this song. You know, it doesn't matter your skin color, it doesn't matter where you come from, you know quimbombo que resbala. And I just want you to say the word kimbombo. That's our word for okra. Let's say it.
Kimbombo.
Kimbombo. So
Kimbombo.
So I want you to repeat it because, you know, it sort of rolls off your tongue just like the slime of the Dominicans, and my friend here is from the Dominican Republic, they use another word. It's called molondron, which is kind of a strong thing. Molondron.
Yeah.
So for us, it's kimbombo, and for Nelson and the Dominican Republic people, it's molondron. And so quiabo.
Quiabo in Brazil.
In Brazil. So, you know, okra became important everywhere that Africans settled in the Americas. And it's just fascinating to see, you know, that in certain countries, for example, in Costa Rica, you find okra on the Caribbean coast, Puerto Limón, in Puerto Viejo, Limón, places like that. But then you go to San Jose, and, you know, nobody knows about kimbombo or okra. You go to certain enclaves, and then you find it. But in Cuba, you know, it's a part of the cuisine. It's a part of us. It's, you know, the relative of hibiscus. It came to Cuba and to all over during the slave trade. And it's something that is very much African, but it's very much ours too. So what I am doing today is a dish that I learned when I was a very young girl. And I learned many recipes because everyone has a different way of making this dish. It's a stew with okra and pork, finished with plantain fufu balls, which is just very important African connection there. But I'm using my father's recipe. It's gonna burn. I'm using my father's recipe. And I decided to do that one because, you know, we're so close to the days of the dead. My father died, I mean, a few years ago, but it's still so much a part of my life because this is the one person that really made me see the beauty of our Africanness, you know, which goes skin deep, has nothing to do with our color. You know, as Roger Bastide said of Bahia, if you are from Bahia, you don't need to be black to be African. So for us, it's the same. It's just a question of recognizing our Africanness. And food is a very important way of expressing it. So this is my father's recipe. You know, touches that are very Spanish, like the chorizo. But then everything else, if you really look at this, you realize what this means. And I will just explain it as we go along. But let me just say that having used pork, what we do is we marinate the pork because in Latin American cooking in general, we build layers of flavor. So we start with something called adobo. It's a marinade, and here are the ingredients. So we normally use something acid, which is a bitter orange juice. In this case, we didn't have it, and we use a combination of orange juice and lime juice. And if you want to give it that kind of a very aromatic edge of the bitter orange, what you do is you use grapefruit. You know, you get a little bit of the rind of the grapefruit, or a little bit of grapefruit juice, and you get that. So there's a little bitterness and an aroma, and lots of garlic and cumin. This is a rather simple marinade that what I normally do is, you know, I don't use these kinds of mortars and pestle. Let me tell you this. In the Afro-Caribbean tradition, it's wooden, a wooden mortar and pestle. We call them pilones. They have the most beautiful pilones in the Dominican Republic, and my entire collection comes from your country.
Nice.
So I have all these different sizes. These are different creatures. And a wonderful chef from the school from Thailand offered me her beautiful metal mortar and pestle, but it was metal, and it's basically used for the papaya, the green papaya salad. So I ended up using these granite things, and as you can see, this is too narrow, you know, and you need the tenderness of the wood when you are mashing your planting things. So anyway, we ended up with a little one, and I will show you how to make the fufu dumplings. But don't blame me if I'm clumsy, because this is not the right thing. But anyway, so I start with the garlic. You mash it there, and you just build your marinade, which looks like this, you know. And you can decide how much you add. Some people like, more acid edge. Other people just simply add salt to the pork. So here what it looks like, and notice this is pork butt, about 2 pounds, that is cut into 2-inch cubes. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but notice that there is fat. I like the fat because I would have used even pork belly because of the unctuous quality of the pork fat. But you marinate it, but then you need to brown this, and then you need to get rid of the marinade, and you reserve it. You reserve it because you're going to use it almost to deglaze the fun, in the cooking pot. So here we have the marinated pork butt, and this is what it looks like after you spend 10 minutes browning it correctly, on all sides, all right? So what you do, you put a little bit of olive oil in your pan, you saute this, you brown it, take it out, and then in the remaining fat, you build what we call sofrito. So that's the second layer of flavor. So in our case, we're using it's a very simple sofrito. The garlic, the cumin, and all these different ingredients is in the marinade that you reserved, all right? So with the fat that is remaining in the pot, and actually, we took too much fat. Do we have any more of the fat left? No. We were so, careful, but we got a lot of fat because the pork was fatty. So on that remaining fat, that has all the brown bits of flavor from the pork, you then add the chorizo, you brown it, and then you add onions and you hot pepper. Essentially, in very traditional, Afro-Cuban dishes, there is an element of heat, which the Africans inherited from the Taino, the Arawak Indians. But sometimes that heat doesn't come. It's not in the food itself, but it's in something like something like this, that you would add later. And then with the Spaniards, you get this vinegar, and with the African influence later on, you get the pickled vinegar. Pickled peppers in vinegar. So you get these bottles. It could be a Pepsi Cola bottle, the tall glass bottles with holes in on the top, and then you would just sprinkle some of that spicy vinegar on top of the food, and then on any table you would find something like that. This we just, we did it this morning in a hurry to show you. And the pepper that we use is the Malagueta type pepper that they use in Brazil, which is a Capsicum frutescens, and in Cuba it's called ají guaguao. And I grow it in my garden, so every time that I have a harvest, I make something like this, and I keep it in my little bottle, okay? But I wanted to have some heat, because that's my own contribution to the dish, so I, whatever I have, if I have, Scotch bonnets or whatever hot pepper, you can add it.
Y'all know she's a great book on chilies.
Oh, yeah.
So then, essentially, what you do is you go, you get tomatoes. I had these poor people skin and seed, like cases and cases. I mean, this man, Rick Ring, he's a dream, by the way. So when you come back here for Words of Flavors and you're cooking, this is the guy to have.
That's right.
This guy is incredible. So now let's get this. So essentially, you start like this, and what you do is you follow the rule of the sofrito. Sofrito means modulated frying. Mm-hmm. So essentially, you are not dumping things, and in 3 minutes you're done. You start, and actually, what I didn't do is you saw that chorizo there, and I would have added to the chorizo, would have added the leftover marinade, and then you deglaze the pot with that. And then you continue building layers of flavor, and this has to cook for more than 10 minutes to get all these, the sofrito properly fried. If you don't do that, then what you get is boiled stuff. And so that's the difference between a great Latin cook and a not so good one. Because you pay attention. So essentially, to finish this, you would have added, like, this is beer. Okay. I need now more heat. This is too modern a stove for me. Okay. So imagine this, burbling, which we're not gonna do. burbling. You know, the tomato has to have, you know, first it has to mellow down and break down. If you want to have more tomatoey flavor, you add some tomato sauce. It's allowed. And if you want to use your cherry tomatoes from your garden, the ones that smell like wild things, it's the best because that's traditional. So when I have my harvest, I use the tiny cherry tomatoes, and I put some leaves because I want that tomatoey. So essentially, this will boil down, and you would add stock. You can use veal stock or beef or chicken, and this will boil down. And essentially, what you do is that you add your pork to this, and you cook it. Cover for about an hour and a half. And what I like to do is this. This is culantro. This is the Native American relative. It's not even a relative. It tastes and smells like cilantro. It's Erinium fetidum, and it grows just about everywhere. But it's very intense in flavor. So what I like to do is I just put a whole bunch of this here. And then, it's something that you can remove later, okay? So let's cover this, and let's keep cooking it.
Beautiful.
And you have to tell me about my timing, because, I
you're good.
go over time all the time.
It's beautiful to see her cooking. It reminds me just watching my mom and grandma.
He already dated me.
No. But it's just this, like...
He gave you an honorific.
Okay,
Just a beautiful energy.
Mijito Nelson. So for me, it's great to be with somebody from the Dominican Republic because I do a lot of work there for Cacao. And to see the young chef that is recovering roots, for me, it's because they have a problem in the Dominican Republic, They do. They have too many tourists. And they don't realize that they have the best food ever. And in the hotels, it's very hard to find real Dominican food. So they have
That's
to,
true. Yeah, in the resorts, they start cooking on other type of cuisines, not their own. But, it's changing. It's up to us chefs to really kind of give tribute to where we come from in our food. Like I was saying, just listening to her explaining everything, it's just like I was watching my mom and grandma in the kitchen. And especially with the music, like that's a ritual for us. You got to have the music in there. You got to have this like happy energy around you while you cook, because the food comes out way better.
So, and this is no art. We do that. We just, dance a little bit in the kitchen.
Did it with my mother too.
Okay. So essentially, this is what happens after 1.5 hours. We had a little bit of veal stock because it was a bit dry. The process in the kitchen of creating a demo where you have to cook your dish 3 times to get here. So this has all the elements that I talked about. Now, the way of finishing this and turning it into an okra stew is, once this is done, so I'm gonna wait until this is coming to a boil, you would add the star of the dish, which is okra. Now, let me tell you this. I've been punished with the okra that I found here. I know that, the problem was to get, everybody wanted the very young okra, which is what I want. You see, I'm fastidious. When I go and buy okra, I go 1 pot at a time. I check it. No blemishes. It has to be perfectly green. And you know what? It didn't happen. So it did not happen. So we got like a little bit, and I think that Chef Matthew took all the good okra for his dishes. I started with a mountain of okra. But anyway, this is what we have. So because okra will cook fast. You don't cook it, you could cook this, you could cut it like in, 1/4 inch, size, but it will melt, it will disappear. So, you cut it like this, 1/2 inch, and then you would add it to your dish, and it will become a part of the sauce. Now, what is the best part of the okra? It's the slime. And look, this okra doesn't have slime. It's slime. Yes, it's slimeless. Slimeless. Okay, so maybe it's a hybrid they created for the American market, because everybody's like freaked out with the slime. What are we gonna do? And all these recipes tell you, well, you put it in water with lime juice and you get rid of the slime. Well, listen, I don't, because this is the beauty of okra, it's the slime. But this one, unfortunately, I wanted to show you, you know how it is, you know. So you would, you know, add your okra. Probably it doesn't look that bad on camera, right? And this essentially will cook for 15 minutes. So, you know, let's cover it and cook it for 15 minutes. We don't need to cover it really. Let me put it here in the back and simmer. Because the finishing touch is something that I'm going to show you with the mortar and pestle are the plantain balls, which we call fufu balls. And that's very important because the African connection is very clear. Now in Africa, especially in West Africa, starchy vegetables, tubers, are pounded in big mortars. And actually, I love to see two women doing it. They have these big pestles, and one, you know, they have a rhythm. One just hits it, the other one, you know, they go. I mean, I don't know how they don't hit each other. It's amazing. But that's how it's done. But what they do is that they pound the starchy vegetables, like the African yam, it could be the yellow yam, or the white one, the scorialata, or plantains, which came to replace the yams, because plantains, you know, they came from Asia into Africa. So it's an import. So people started using more plantains than yams, all right? So, but the thing is that they wanted to release the starch, or breaking the cells, you get almost like a glue, you know, it's impressive to me to see that texture, because they make balls that are very tight, and they use them as bread. So it's a very different concept of the fufu. For us, the fufu is a puree. Now, what happens when you're making fufu, okay, is that you have to have good plantains, you know? So it's important, you know, so when you're a Latin cook, and you guys are the masters, the Dominicans are the masters of plantains.
Thank you.
They know, they go to the market, they touch it.
Puerto Ricans think differently though, but.
But the Puerto Ricans are very good too. But the thing is that
We're always arguing about it.
they're very good. And so, but you get a good, it has to be green, you know, it has to be right. When it's not, it can be a disaster, okay? Oh God, I knew that. I told him, I said, I'm going to turn on the phone, probably my husband, asking how everything is. All right, so it's fine, darling. But anyway, so you get your plátano. This is called plátano verde, and it has to be right. And what you do is that, you know, I basically trim it in the edges, and I just do this. I don't bother to peel this, you know. I don't bother to peel it. I just put it in the boiling water with some salt, and I boil it. So this is what you get. And what is important to know, somebody didn't cut the tip. All right. Just like that. Okay. No, it's not his fault. We have all this before. Okay, he knows it already. So look how easy, you know?
How long are you boiling it for?
Now, this is easy, you see?
Yeah.
And it's a little bit hot, but it's okay. And when the plátano is not that great, you know, it can get a little discolored, okay? I'm just blaming the plátano people. Okay, well, anyway.
Maricel, how long do you boil it for?
My what?
How long do you boil it for?
20 minutes. Maybe 25 if they're crummy. So, I mean, the thing is also that there is a little trick, okay? So you have your plátano that maybe is not that great when it's green and it's a bit tough, but then you get maybe a half-ripe plantain, or even a ripe plantain. We didn't have half-ripe here. We had the, you know, so you blend it, because when you are going to mash it, it will help. Look at this, you know, I'm suffering here. Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
And guys, while she's doing that, the fufu, I'm starting my braised chicken on my side. As you guys saw, just going technical, sweating down my vegetables. I actually sear my chicken first, so I have 2 chicken thighs. You can use breast too, but in the Caribbean, in the West Africa, we love our thighs. We love our dark meat, so it's more juicy. It was marinating for 24 hours in a sofrito, and you heard the word from a chef here, my sofrito is green, so using green bell peppers. Because I'm in California, I've been here, I use a little serranos too for a little bit of heat. There's cilantro, a little bit of culantro also, she mentioned, which is delicious, but it is hard to get here. But whenever I find that, I love to use it. It just ties in that time just watching my mom and grandma cooking in the kitchen. There's red onions, a lot of garlic, olive oil, and just salt. And then something we call adobo, which is also the marination man, and there's also special seasoning for that that we create. That has a lot of dry citrus, achiote, paprika, comino, and garlic and onion. So I serve my chicken, now I'm sorted down my vegetables, just onions and garlic. You can add like carrots and all that too. Wintertime, like parsnips go really well in this dish. It's absolutely delicious. Sorted down, but now I'm frying, like she mentioned, frying the sofrito in with the rest of the vegetables. So just getting all those delicious flavors, just delicious aromas. Do you guys get to smell a little bit up there? Yeah? It smells good? And then now I'm gonna add my chicken. And then all that beautiful juice, put it right in there. Before I give it back to chef, so you can see I have a lot of onions and garlic in here. I want to add that nice sweetness from the onions. And I use red onions in my cooking. Now I'm going to deglaze a little bit of Maggi. Maggi is very prominent in our culture, in our food, in many cultures actually. It's one of those sauces we don't know what's really in here, but it just tastes delicious, right? It gives great color.
That's very typical.
You gotta have your adobo, you gotta have your Maggi.
It's a tradition that we inherited from our great-great-great-grandparents.
Perfect. Just gives us a nice little brown color. And Chef, how's fufu going?
Well, I mean, this is pure misery.
It looks delicious.
I need to have like an electric glass.
To me, it looks like if you guys ever have mofongo or mango, that's the best
But
thing
you
right
see,
there.
you guys have it easy because, you know, in the Dominican Republic, you have something called mango for breakfast.
Yeah.
But they sometimes they use the banana, the green bananas. So they don't have to do this, you know, they don't suffer. So it's in the morning with eggs and red onions.
Yeah, yeah.
That's mango. The Dominican Republic, what they do is they fry you know, they cut the plant in sections, like 2-inch sections, they fry it, and then they mash it. So you get a little bit of texture,
Yeah.
you know. But for us, it's boiled, you know, in a very African way. You boil it and you mash it in these big mortars. But where is it? Oh, where did you put my? That's what it was. Yeah. It's horrible. No, I mean,
Then why
it's
she's
like
doing
you
that?
never get the right texture, you know.
Yeah.
And in the kitchen, we spend an inordinate amount of time trying to get, you know, the nice texture. Okay, so I'm gonna do only one, unless you wanna do more. Okay, so the thing is, you know, I'm gonna show you. So I have different textures here to show you. You know, this is finished. So we did them in the kitchen. So this is perfect, you know. This would be my style because we spent an hour pounding it in a little mortar. So it's very smooth. It doesn't have big chunks of the, you know, of the plantain. Everything is cooked. Look at the texture of something like this, you know. We ran out of time, so you can see. But you know what? The flavor's gonna be fine, you know. And what I like to do is that I don't like to do this the day before because the plantain has a lot of starch, become very hard. All right, and it's not a good idea. I think we can lower this to medium.
Okay, guys, while she's staring, I just added my olives in here, and also I have orange. Again, you can't find bitter orange really easily here, so we did a mix of lemon and lime, but also orange juice in there too, navel oranges.
Is
So I
there a
just
particular
deglaze.
olive you like more than another?
So what does
Particular what?
Olive.
For this dish, just regular Spanish olives, the best, yeah. Or I could go with Costura. Yeah, it's actually delicious.
No, but
It just gives a little kind of like that nuttiness, a little umami in there too from the brine. It's really fantastic. And I hated olives growing up, but now I really enjoy it. The more you kind of explore, and especially as a chef, we have a wealth of stuff to explore, especially when coming to this event, and being in California too. I'm born and raised in New York, in Washington Heights. If you guys know the movie In the Heights, that's my neighborhood. So I grew up there, been out here for about 13 years now in the Bay, have 2 beautiful places in Oakland. But it's a really good time for me to really dig in more to my roots. I spoke about this in the first demo, that we as chefs now can really be ourselves in the kitchen. Before, in order to be known, as you guys know, we had to cook more Eurocentric food, which is good. We learned a lot, we learned some great techniques, but now we can really kind of cook food that we love and we grew up with. That really has a great connection to the motherland and also our childhood and our family. So this dish, like the braised chicken, pollo guisado is called. My grandma usually uses game hen for it. My mom uses chicken thighs. It's the one dish I always ask for them to cook for me whenever I visit, which I'll be going back to New York in 2 weeks, so I'll be having this for my grandma. But it's fantastic. It just really gives the best memories for me. You know, just the smell of this is like, it's so many emotions going on, you know? And that's a really good connection with food that we have. When it brings back such a great memory, there's so much love into it, you know? We're building great flavor, but you gotta keep yourself happy while you're doing it. And it goes back to memories, to listening to music, having great people in your kitchen, having conversations. Like what we're doing together is really what our families do. You know, there's multiple people in the kitchen cooking. And there's no stress, just great energy. Sometimes if it's the moms or grandmas will be gossiping and watching novela.
Mom and grandma.
Right? No, not
Okay, you don't.
but yeah, but it's one of those special times. So I added this, so now I'm gonna add my chicken stock. So again, we're braising this. Gonna cover the chicken. Now I'm gonna add my spices, a little more of the orange once it comes to boil. And then tomato paste is one of those secrets. As you know, chef, like to thicken our sauces, our stews. Tomato paste is a really fantastic component. Adds a nice bit of sweetness to it.
What's the name of your restaurant so they know?
First one is alaMar Kitchen and Bar. It's my first baby, opened 2014. We're 8.5 years old now, which is fantastic. And then the other one is called Sobre Mesa. It's a really sexy cocktail bar. And the cocktail bar really represents who I am and where I'm going. And the intentions I have with my food and my cooking. Really digging into the roots, really showcasing how special the African diaspora is, how large and broad it is, and how many things you can kind of touch by. You know, how special it is. It's really fantastic for me to really tie into that. Even now, I'm 41 years old, and I'm trying to educate myself more on my roots. It's never too late, you know? It's never too late. Asking, being by great people, great chefs, researching through, we have the power of internet now. There's so much out there that we need to learn and really give tribute to everything we do. Like just the ritual we just did at the beginning, that meant a lot to me. That's special when we could do that as people, you know? So as chefs, we're always stuck in the kitchen cooking for the masses, but when we can really be ourselves and kind of give tribute to where we come from, it's a special moment.
So, did you put any recado there? Any culantro?
Mm-hmm. So it was in my sofrito here.
Okay,
Yeah.
but that's key to Dominican seasonings. You know this. What is it? I love this. This is so amazing, and you can grow it in your garden, actually indoors. This is like a sign of identity, especially Dominican and Puerto Rican cooking. The flavor is more intense than cilantro. I like it much more than cilantro. What are you adding now?
So I'm adding my sazon. So I got a little bit
Sazon,
of...
that's another thing. Tell us about sazon.
Sazon.
That's another little secret there.
Sazon comes in so many different ways. What I'm doing here is it's kind of mimicking adobo, something we grew up with that really flavors our food. So I have comino, cumin, lemon pepper is a really good kind of dry citrus, paprika, I have achiote, garlic and onion, and then culantro, dry culantro.
So you're doing it yourself, you're not,
Yeah.
you're not getting the sazon from Goya.
Used to, but I learned some tricks. But just kind of, researching is what it is. You got to educate yourself and really kind of have fun with it. So kind of doing my own adobo. And I have a nice mix here too. A little bit of salt. Chef, you want to try it?
Sure. It's good. And everyone has a different
Yeah.
way of making sazon.
You can see this is braising nicely. I'm going to add some orange zest, so I'm using all of the orange. I'm going to add a tiny bit more chicken stock, and I'm going to cover this and let it braise for about 2 hours. But magic of TV, I have it done already, so. And Chef, that smells fantastic. I gotta say,
Well, I
that's
think I'm
out of
getting
front row right
there.
here, so.
I'm getting there, and in fact, you know, maybe I should finish this. So, I could have cooked this to death, like, you know, to the color of green fatigues, really, you know, army fatigues. And but I just want to leave it with a little bit of texture and color. And if the slime had been there, you would have seen, you know, that it binds everything together. So, I mean, the finishing touch essentially is just to add the plantain balls, and hopefully they won't disintegrate, as it happened to me once at the James Beard Foundation. So someone was helping me and didn't get the instructions right, and so I could see, you know, the balls kind of disintegrating. It was very embarrassing, but I lied, and I said, you know, this is the way it's supposed to be. I remember to be a child. Never apologize. So in this case, I was very truthful, you know. But the thing is, you know, that the brown earth notes of this, you know, with the beautiful golden fufu balls, so it's really, I think it's very beautiful. And the last time before the pandemic, I was with my family. I made this for Christmas Eve. So that's how important it is, you know, that you would come and enjoy something like this that has very strong African roots. The connection is there. And I just want to say 2 or 3 things before we move on about the significance of why I chose this dish. Okay, to me, it's not the quintessential Afro-Cuban dish. You know, because we have so many Afro-Cuban dishes, but it comes close to be the quintessential dish, because here, you know, you have okra and plantains, 2 African ingredients that took Cuba and the Americas by storm, together in one plate. You have, if you look at the ingredients, you know, the plantains, the okra, even the tomatoes, the culantro that I added, the pork. Well, this is a conuco. Remember this word, a conuco in a pot. Conuco were the small plots of land where the Africans that were brought in as slaves would cook food to supplement their, you know, the rations of the sugarcane mills. So usually these plots of land were behind the barracks. And in the case of Cuba and other Hispanic Caribbean places, they were modeled after the Taino, the Arawak Indian conucos, you know, the small plots, mixed population of plants growing together, you know? And then the Africans had their own tradition. So in the conucos, a new agricultural, sustainable, you know, culture came to be. So if you look at this, even the pigs were fed with the tubers that were grown there. And the Africans sold what they could not eat to the peasants. And with that money, they bought their freedom. So in a way, it's a freedom pot, you think of it. So the third, the third element of identity that drives me to this dish is that it shows how certain Afro-Cuban foods lasted for a long time, because these African dishes, inspired dishes, found niches of survival. In this particular case, the niche of survival, you know, were niches of identity and niches of identity that were transforming. They had a transforming force because they became the feast foods, particular days like Carnival, or in this particular case, this is ritual food for one of the most important gods of the Yoruba pantheon. And that god, or Orisha, is Shango. So these are the foods of Shango, because the African Orishas, or gods, owned plants. They were the masters of El Monte, where things grew. So Shango is the master of okra and the master of plantains. So when you see, can you come here while I show the offering there? And be careful not to disintegrate.
No pressure.
All right. So what I did, I brought you and the offering that the devotees of Shango would present to the deity. On what day? December 3rd. Do you know what happens the day after? It's the day of Saint Barbara, the Catholic saint. But this Afro-Cuban religion called Santeria is syncretic. So when the slaves, the Africans were slaves, they came in, they were not allowed to practice their religion, but they were allowed to form confraternities or cabildos. But they had to be under the aegis of a particular Catholic saint. So those Africans who believed in Shango, who's the god of war, of lightning, the master of the thunderbolt, dressed in red.
Justice.
There. So they embraced Saint Barbara, because Saint Barbara is powerful. She was killed by her father. She always appears in this, images holding, the tower of the castle where her father killed her, and a sword. She's, actually, the army. That's a patron saint of the army. No, I think in the United States they do things on December 4th. So, but the thing is that it's a female saint. But how did these people equated the god of war with a woman saint? Because there is flexibility about sexuality, in Yoruba cosmology. The female offers a cooling effect, especially for a god that is fierce and mischievous and a glutton. So it's like a balance. This idea of complementarity is key to the Yoruba way of thinking. And again, the Shango is the owner of plantains and okra, and you have to offer 6 of each. So normally, in a home where there are practitioners of Santeria, you would see an image of Saint Barbara, but then you would see a soup tureen, or sort of a wooden container containing a stone which embodies the force of Shango. And around it, sort of very elaborate choreography of offerings. 6. Do not dare to offer less. Okay, 6. So here we have 6 okra pots, the best we could find, 6 plantains, and obviously the color red is important for Shango, so I stole this from the garden in the open. The pomegranates or red delicious. I don't like red delicious, so I prefer and flowers. So I didn't have red roses, so zinnias. So this would be together with all the paraphernalia. Now, do you want to own some of these objects? You go to stores called botanicals. They're in every Hispanic neighborhood, and you can find, everything that you need to practice. Now, I do this every December 3rd. When I was a student of anthropology at NYU, West Africa, and West African religions in the Americas, I would invite my colleagues and my classmates, and I would make this dish, and I would do these offerings. So, I'm not a practitioner, by the way, for many reasons. I wanted to have more of a distance to understand it better, I think. But it's my homage, is almost a tribute to my, to my roots, my Africanness that is, is more than skin deep. So, this is why I chose this particular dish. And the same thing will be done in my house December 3rd. And I hope that you enjoy it and do it too. And dress in red, please.
That's good.
That's so beautiful.
Okay.
Yeah, it means the world to see things like that and just learn from each other. We can inspire each other so much just by asking questions and just observing, listening to each other. It's really special. So,
I'm gonna follow you,
Oh yeah, I'll follow you already.
You have to, stay true.
Always.
Okay.
Always.
You are the
I
future.
promise. Thank you. Appreciate that. And things that she said to me, I'm doing with the youth too. We have to make that recircling cycle. Always teaching the youth about culture, about food, different style of things to do in the kitchen. Just passing on stories. That's what we do with our dishes. But as you can see, I took out my chicken here. That's the way it's going to look. Normally, you can braise this either on the stovetop with a lid on, or you can put it in an oven with the lid. Move it on the side. Chef. Quiere probar?
Claro.
Pass it on to each other.
Wow. Delicioso.
Gracias.
It's really good. Intense.
Thank you so much. And then for Afro-Latinos, there's one dish that really kind of is that starter for the night, and it's empanadas. As you know, in both our cultures, empanadas is the one thing that kind of is a starter for the feast. So I did some picadillo empanadas. Picadillo is ground beef with olives. Usually sometimes they put raisins in it. I never liked the raisins. I love raisins, but never liked it in the dish, but so I did it without. But I have some cheddar cheese in there. My mom used to use this really sharp cheddar. It makes it super gooey and delicious. We made our own dough, so basically take your dough, put all your seasoning there. But I use the same seasoning as the chicken for the ground beef.
What's in your dough?
Flour, water, eggs, a little bit of butter. Super simple. So basically, you have your fork, you fold it in, old school style. Use that. This one's a bit thin on. You guys get the gist. Let's put it look like this. So I did a beautiful avocado crema, almost like a guacamole, but added some Dominican spices to it. I'm gonna plate that. And we do something similar to this at my restaurant. Avocado on top. We're in California, so we got to use flowers, right? Michael cilantro. Look how pretty that looks. So you can take something so traditional, so cultural, and just make it look beautiful. You're telling stories with the food, with the dishes. I'm gonna do the same with the chicken. I already have some rice. Of course, we gotta have this with our rice.
You have rice, This needs rice.
Pieces. Make it kind of family style. And again, these beautiful stews, one-pot dishes, really ties to where we come from and our African heritage. For me, that's really what is so obvious for me when people say we're not black, we don't come from Africa. Look at these dishes. This is something I grew up with. Even with that, it ties us. It's so obvious, and we have to appreciate that and always contribute. Got a beautiful sauce. The sauce is really what makes this dish beautiful. And this is what I would normally have with tostones, the fried green plantains, or with maduros, which is the ripe sweet plantains.
So you see, they have it that way, and we have the plantains in the shape of the dumplings.
Mm-hmm.
But the function is the same.
Here you go, guys. So
Gorgeous.
beef empanadas, pollo guisado.
But no, it's the rice. No, it's the rice. You know, that rice with this would have been
Oh, yeah.
absolutely fantastic. I mean, I would have served
Good
this
together.
with the white rice or with red kidney beans and rice, like I did for last night. I would have done the garifuna with the coconut milk would have been amazing. But in my part of the country, we have
That's the feast right there.
special dish con queso, you know,
Yes.
like your moros.
Moros, yeah,
But with
yeah.
the red kidney beans. Now, I don't have flowers for my garnish,
No.
but this is something, come here. I mean, I'm always learning. It's like, the culantro for a garden is a problem because immediately with the heat, it begins to discolor. And I would not put a little bit of cilantro here, but he fried this. And, this is very common, to fry these leaves, and it's just beautiful. I never thought that it would work with cilantro, the culantro, but it does. So essentially, this is
Beautiful.
and it tastes so good, that's it.
Oh, yeah.
That's it. And with a little rice, an
Oh, yeah.
avocado salad would be incredible with this.
Exactly.
And then you have, something very Afro-Cuban, just the essence of your country.
Gracias. Yeah, this is how we used to eat as kids. Like, look at that. And it's usually more at the table. It's when we have a feast as a family together, or just friends. It's a really special moment in all our cultures. So never forget that. Never forget your past. Always celebrate the past, but always keep moving forward.
Can you hear me? Hello? Okay, whoa, there we go. Okay. Well, thank you to Chefs Nelson German and Dr. Presilla for that wonderful demo. I think you both just, I thought you've worked together before. You have such a nice rapport. But just to be able to see the connections between both and to see the respect that's there, it was just a really wonderful demo. And thank you to Scott, for the moderation, and just want to say that his hominy and coconut dumplings will be available to sample at tomorrow's marketplace. And then we're going to slides. And I think it's just one slide. Okay, so we have an exciting afternoon coming up with block number 2 of breakout sessions. And so let me see here. So we have, we're going to do a break first. I'll talk about that in a second. But we do have we are doing here in Ecolab influential flavors and caterings and supper clubs. And so again, these sessions are on the back of your badges. And then you'll be able to see, you can see, back in the Woodstone, sorry, I'm trying to do this by memory, and really I need to just look at my notes. But anyway, so we're going to have these sessions. If you can't find your space, we do have the hospitality desk, and you can ask any of us. And then, what else did I want to say? I wanted to say thank you to the sponsors. Next, we're going to go to our flavor discovery break, and we'll have book signing with Hawa Hassan, and then tasting sponsored by Dole Packaged Foods, Mitsubishi Chemical Clean Sweet Corporation, National Mango Board, and then we will come back at 4:55 for a general session after the breakouts, where we have Paula Velez and Jamila Robinson baking through the Afro-Latin pantry. And so I think that's just a kind of nice bookend there. But thanks again, chefs. It was a wonderful demo. And so welcome and thank you. And enjoy, boy, I need some coffee. Enjoy the break. Thank you.